Oh, actually, I had one more. Time for another terrible idea. This one also related to Superman. For those of you old enough to remember the show Family Matters, you'll remember that it was initially kind of the Carl Winslow show. But very quickly, it became the Steve Urkel show. Just like how The Simpsons went from being the Bart show to the Homer show. Or recently, how very quickly the Big Bang Theory went from being the Leonard show to the Sheldon show. Maybe it always intended to be the Sheldon show. But Urkel definitely became the star. Over the course of the show, later on, I guess as... what was that kid's name? Whatever. Jaleel White. I guess Jaleel White got tired of being, looked at everywhere like, oh, it's fucking Steve Urkel. And he wanted to be, a more attractive, more mature guy. So, I guess they wrote in this character, Stefan Urk-El. Like he drank some Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde potion and became the cool version. Stefan Urk-El. And I started thinking about what Urk-El actually was. He was basically, Steve would stand up straight, he would take his glasses off, he would dress better. And I started thinking, who else does this sort of behavior? Who gets an entirely new persona? One that actually seems to have powers far beyond those of mortal men, especially more than his sort of normal, mild-mannered persona. Different posture, glasses off, change of clothes. Superman. That's right, Steve Urkel is actually Steve Urk-El. Kind of like kal-el, it's Urk-El. The second-to-last son of Krypton. Jor-El wasn't the only scientist on Krypton to notice that the world was going to blow up. Otherwise, if he was, Krypton has some really shitty scientists. But Steve's parents, they knew this was going to happen too. But sadly, the problems of racism and wealth inequality, they existed on Krypton as well as here on Earth. And so the Urk-El family could not afford the fancy sort of escape spaceship that the House of Jor-El could. So they had to get one that was a little bit slower, and it was just a bit cheaper. Racism sucks. Kryptonians. Assholes. But, so instead of, his ship rocketing through space like Kal-El's and landing on Earth probably late teens, early 20s for him to grow up and be Superman by the late 30s, it took him much longer. I guess not in the galactic sense. But he got here probably in the late 70s, maybe into the mid 80s. He came in, he was a bit more developed than Kal-El was. And he had actually been absorbing knowledge that entire time. He's been learning through the crystals that Kal-El didn't have on his quick journey. And so by that time, he had already mastered a lot of the Kryptonian technology. So he landed on Earth, knew what it was, and he landed, instead of in Kansas, he landed kind of outside Chicago. He said, to fit in and live in this world, I've got to have certain things, family and all that sort of stuff. So he used the Kryptonian technology to make parent robots similar to the Superman robots so he could live a normal life amongst the humans. He did try and hide his exceptional abilities by acting as this super nerd, this mild-mannered version of what he could be. Put the glasses on, the suspenders, the high pants, and everything was fine until, Urk-El's body started to develop and he started to notice Laura Winslow. And he's like, man, I'm not going to get anywhere as Steve Urkel. So he actually came up with this way to become Urk-El, which really just changed his behavior. He got these powers. The women couldn't resist him. He was still just as smart. He could move smoothly. His movements were all fluid, almost dance-like. He was the super Urkel. Rather than just messing things up and going, did I do that? He was saving the day. And similar to the Clark Kent versus Superman dynamic, Laura Winslow, his Lois Lane, did eventually realize she had affection more for Steve, for the human version the one who wanted to live a normal life, as opposed to the super version. You know, she probably still got a little bit from both sides. Not, literally. That'd be kind of a neat trick, though. But, yeah, I think that, whenever he would knock something over and be like, did I do that? He's like covering up for like super speed, or, he got excited and knocked it over with his super breath. So he was just kind of trying to hide out. I think that this is another story for DC to pick up. Go to whoever had the TGIF lineup, license Steve Urk-El, make him the new Superman sidekick, perhaps a villain, because you always have like 8,000 Kryptonians, despite there only supposed to being one. No matter how many times you try and clean that up, you've always got your Zods and ever thousands of criminals in the Phantom Zone. You've got Kandor, Supergirl. You've tried to write out Power Girl and say that she's not really Kryptonian, and God knows that's all confusing. If you got room for all that shit, Streaky the Super Cat, Beppo the Super Monkey, Crypto, I guess Comet. The only one I know is a Kryptonian, I guess, would be Crypto. Comet was some weird fucking centaur sex thing. It was odd. But yes, that was today's terrible idea. Steve Urk-El, second to last son of Krypton.